Exploring mental health means moving from perhaps some simplistic ways to more complex ways of the way that we think about ourselves, other people, and then our experience in the world. When we address our mental health, recently I've come to discover how important mental health is to everyone, especially Black people, and more specifically Black men.
I think mental health is crucial to being full. When we talk about mental health, we should buy into it or embrace it just like we embrace our physical health. We talk about spiritual health, we talk about physical health, but mental health is oftentimes neglected. If you want to be a full, self-actualized individual, I think you have to address mental health issues.
Mental health is also synonymous with like your physical health, and I think as Black people, we even ignore that. You know, we don't go into the doctor until we're dead or dying.
For me, mental health is basically your thoughts and your feelings, and they converge and they impact how you behave with yourself. It impacts how you behave with other people, whether it's your family, relationships, on the job. And I think as Black people, we have a unique lens in which we perceive like how we think and feel based on our history as Black people in America.
My name is Joshua Walker. I am from South Carolina, and I've really dedicated my life to increasing diversity and inclusion in front of and behind the camera.
I'm Anthony Chambers, licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm from South Central Los Angeles.
I'm Daniel Myatt. I'm originally from Chicago. I'm a mental health promoter. I work for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
My name is Uriah City. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Los Angeles.
I was raised in a single parent home. My father was murdered by the time I was in 6th grade. And so I think your family is part of your support system. And so I think you see a lot of things that you think are normal or typical. So I think you get a lot of your development as a person from your family.
I think that masculinity norms plays a significant role in mental health of Black men because of toxic masculinity and what the idea of masculinity actually means, and why it's different for straight men to be masculine, how it's different for gay men to be masculine, and like there's that whole binary and non-binary. I think in general, Black men are not allowed to be weak and are not allowed to be perceived as weak, and if you are, then you're not respected in your community.
I think we also have to define like what does weak look like? What does that mean? And how like the dominant society like looks at that. So if we think about like somebody being vulnerable, right? Is that a weakness or is that actually a strength, right? And so when we think about the like classic like definition of a Black man, they're strong, they're stoic, they're providers, they don't emote emotions. You have to communicate how you think and feel, right? And this idea of being like a Black man, you know, you're supposed to be strong, stoic, non-communicative, a provider for your family. So I think it conflates that. So I think we have to redefine like what masculinity means.
There's an assumption that we still have to be cool. We still have to be tough. We have to be a roughneck. And that's the definition of a Black man. A true Black man is a roughneck.
But when we're talking about masculinity and vulnerability in a state of this holistic wholeness, is a mix of, not all of it, but where you can be a man. And you can also have a little bit of emotion and a little bit of tenderness.
Again, unlearn things that like our parents are taught us because they learned a certain way and their parents taught them something because of their individual experience. So it's all just unlearning and unpacking and unlearning the things that we were just forced to deal with.
When we're talking about going back those 100 years in slavery and corporal punishment and that brutality, right? That generational trauma, that has been experienced through the generations. As we see it with a lot of people with corporal punishment, get the switch, get the belt, right? You know, punishing your children, punishing little Black boys, Black girls, but Black boys in a way that has been perpetuated over time. That's learned.
Culturally competent. That's a beautiful phrase. And I mean, it comes to mind when I was looking for a therapist for my son. And everything was like, he's just an angry Black man. Everything was rooted in his anger. He's just angry about society and angry, you know, and yeah, that cultural competence or lack thereof
where does that come from? If we think about like the James Baldwin quote, to be like conscious and black in America is to be in a state of rage, right? So I think again, if you have somebody culturally competent, you would try to look deeper into like what's underneath that anger. Where does it come from? Why is he so angry? What systems are maintaining that anger? I think the murder of George Floyd was a turning point in just American society and the world in general, because we got to see, I think, up close and personal what I feel like I knew, members of my family and my community knew all along that was going on as far as like police brutality. We got to see that up close and personal. We got to hear this man scream out for his mom. Again, if we're talking about masculinity, right?
Yeah.
You know, to call out for your mom in a state of distress and to the point of death. I think it really shook me personally. I think it shook the world. I think it was a wake-up call.
We're talking about Ku Klux Klan and things like that. So I grew up in an area that there are Confederate flags everywhere. And when I went back home in this past 10 years or so, I told my mom, I was like, Mother, what are all these Confederate flags? And she said, baby, they always been there.
I think I still feel triggered by just the name George Floyd now, for the reason that everybody's already saying. But it's frustrating because, well, for one, as a D&I professional, in 2020 was exhausting. Because like you said, like companies were all turning towards like, what do we do like to fix the racism problem? And then they turned to us to fix the racism problem like we were the ones that caused it. So that was frustrating. You know, it's easy for us to say that because the whole world was involved with that conversation. So it feels like we're using him as like a martyr and a scapegoat at the same time. And I think that's a disrespect to his memory. I don't think that he died on purpose to like make this happen for our society.
Great point. But I think it works both ways in that we have to be that person for someone else. We have to be that listener. We have to be that empathetic ear for that other. You know, it goes both ways. So many men are like, I think we're looking for a partner, a romantic partner who will listen and who will support me and be my, whatever. And we're not that for other people.
If we think about like just being a black man and the black community, we have to have trust, right? And I think there's so many systems that have failed us that we've lost trust in, right? So I think number one is to like answer your question, part of that is like, how do we be that? We have to find something that we trust in, whether that's our partner, whether that's our family members. Do we trust the things that people say at work? Do we trust our supervisors, what they say, and how they navigate?
I would add like support is another thing that's like really resonating for me, and I think it's important that to have that support from like a significant other, a friend that's like, especially if you are nervous about going into therapy and you're hesitant about it, and anecdotally, I was in a relationship, and my partner knew that we were in a toxic relationship, and I think that was a part of the thing that we talked about a lot.
The words of advice that I would share with black men interested, feeling like they need to seek mental health therapy is, I think the important piece would be to, just like we talked about this earlier, just like if you have a pain, you would go to the doctor, right? If something is off emotionally, if something is off with your thoughts, if something is off in the way that you're behaving, treat that. Go seek mental health advice. Go seek mental health professionals.
We may have pain, but we still don't go to the doctor until
Right.
It's like the very last minute that we should go to the doctor. But I think that you're right, that if you do feel that pain, you should act on that. But I think that it really goes back to us showing up for ourselves and like advocating for ourselves and understanding that if this is something that you feel like you need, then you probably should act on it.
Maybe it's not going to be that formal journey to mental health with a therapist, but find someone that you can share with. Vulnerability is a virtue. It's a strength. It's not a weakness.
And I think everybody's mental health journey is different. So like you said, it might not be this formal where you go in and meet with a therapist, but I think you have to have an outlet, right? And I think the context of therapy, like meeting with a therapist, is one way in which you have an outlet. And you have to look at it like a balloon. You have to have an outlet, right? So if you keep stuffing that racism or the problems on the job or that family trauma or, you know, problems with your relationship. If you keep stuffing it in a balloon, eventually it's gonna pop. Maybe it's talking with a trusted, supported family member or spouse. That's an outlet for you.
I would encourage you to either contact your local state mental health or county mental health. And they can also help guide folks of services that are available, oftentimes free or low cost. I also encourage, especially for Black men, group therapy is understated of how effective it can be. Whether it is a church group, there are a lot of great men's church groups.
I gotta mention NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. You can go to their website. They're the largest grassroots mental health organization in America, and it's a great starting point. There's an affiliate in every community, and they can help you get the help.